Okay, we are live. Here we go. Hey, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back, Tamika. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Feeling good, feeling great. So, if you are tuning in right now, welcome to our 11th episode. And this is our first episode for 2021. And already we have experienced some changes. We've experienced changes of new leadership. We've seen some things that we thought would never happen, but happened, but been telling you that this would happen. And,
Such as what, Eric?
you know, but we're gonna go into that tonight because essentially we're gonna have a conversation around the color line. Regarding Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois. Some would say it's Du Bois, Du Bois. Hey, the fact of the matter is, when it comes to him being one of the first socialists and PhDs, it seems like popular society has not been listening to actually what he was saying over 100 years ago. And so here we are tonight with our guests who have joined us this evening, who are coming from different walks of life. I'm excited to hop in this panel tonight. How about you, Tamika?
I am always excited, and I just want to piggyback off of Eric. We are really excited. This is our first community conversation of 2021, episode number 11, which is crazy to even think about, but we do. We have some amazing people that have joined us. And I love the bios because I love getting to know people. So we got a nice little group right here. And I mean, who wants to kick it off? Who wants to just do a short bio? You don't need like 10, 15 minutes. I know y'all got super accomplishments and all of that, but who would like to kick us off?
We always start with the ladies. So go ahead. I'm just drop. I see her. I always feel like this is the Brady Bunch. So we got Sister Jones. Go ahead.
Doing. My name says Jones here on Zoom, but it is now Barclay. I just recently got married.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yes, my name's Autumn Barclay. I am originally from Houston, Texas. Grew up in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and I have moved all over the country. Ended up here in Indianapolis because I fell in love and got married. I have a history, I have a background in mass communications. I've been a news producer, a news director. And I'm currently serving as the creative director at my church in Anderson, Indiana, called New Purpose Ministries. So that's just real quick about me.
Love it. Thank you, Autumn.
Thank you.
We'll shift over here to Miss Brooke.
Hi, my name is Brooke Carey. I was born and raised in Houston, Texas. And then I am now an Anderson University junior social work and psychology student. I'm currently interning for Miss Veronica, and so that's how I found out about this. And I'm just happy to be here, be a part of the conversation, learn a lot, hopefully.
You will. Thank you for joining us, Brooke.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and bump it up to Mr. Jackson here.
What about Miranda? You forgot about Miranda.
Come on down to Miranda. I'm sorry.
Wait a minute.
You said ladies first.
Yeah.
I tend to take the artist with transition.
No, you're fine. Hi, I'm Miranda Byrd. I am a full-time mom and a full-time artist. I am a resident artist of residency at Aton Center here in Anderson, Indiana. We recently just did a mural in town for Anderson. It says "Welcome to Anderson," which was a really cool experience. My kids got to chime in and help. I met Veronica Watkins, which is who led me to be a part of this by a Paint With Me class, and I'm excited to be here and have this opportunity.
We're excited to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, everyone. My name is William Jackson. First, I want to thank Ms. Catchings and Mr. Saunders for allowing us to be here this evening. And also thank you both for creating a safe space for people to come together from diverse backgrounds to talk about real issues. I really appreciate you too for doing that. As I said before, my name is William Jackson. I'm currently the president of Southern Cross Masonic Lodge number 39 here in Indianapolis, Indiana. I also have the privilege of being an elected official. I'm elected to the Center Township Advisory Board for Marion County, representing District number 5. I'm excited about this evening and looking forward to a lively dialogue and great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being here, William.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, sir. We'll come on down to Mr. Hunter.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Piggyback off of Mr. Jackson, I would like to thank Tamika and Eric for putting this together. Beyond who I am, you know what? I'm a child of God. I'm God-fearing, and I'm glad, 2020 was a tough year. Glad to be here. I know a lot of people experienced a lot of things. Glad to be able to have this conversation. I'm currently the sales manager at Wish TV. But things that I've accomplished in the past are just that in the past. I look forward to making a difference for the future. So that's who I am and what I do and what I bring to the table.
Love it. Thank you, Jason.
Right. And we got Judge George. I'm gonna be honest, Judge, we're not gonna all rise. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
I didn't catch the end of that, but listen, I'm George Tankle. I also would like to thank Tamika, Eric, for hosting this, and of course, it's an honor for me. I went back and listened to some of your prior sessions; they were absolutely phenomenal, and I'm just humbled to be here. But I'm from Anderson, Indiana, born in Bloomington, but raised in Anderson. But my wife was from Lake Charles, Louisiana. So that's kind of an interesting thing here that one of our members is from there. And I spent 33 years as a criminal defense lawyer and represented, of course, the majority of my clients, unfortunately, were Black. And then the last 12 years, I had the great privilege to be the juvenile court judge in Madison County. And during that time, we became one of the few counties at the state at that level of being a juvenile detention alternative initiative, finding alternatives and initiatives that would prevent so many detentions for our youth. And most recently, 2019, we became Race, Equity, and Inclusion pilot county for the state of Indiana. And that's the work I'm really striving to help on right now.
Thank you, Judge.
That's certainly, thank you. That's certainly appreciated. Guys, if you're out here viewing, I see we got some viewers here. Whatever questions you might have throughout the chat, go ahead and send them on in the chat. And if you have any programs coming up, you can put that in the chat as well. But we're ready to get started in some of these questions. And again, I want to be mindful that we're talking today, but we also want to try to get to a point where what kind of action we can take, and what kind of action this can lead to, because again, it's good talk, but new year, we've seen what's in for us. And I think the first question, Tamika, are you ready?
I'm ready. I'm always ready. Eric,
are you kidding me? Hey, are you ready though? Are you ready? Okay.
Yeah, definitely am.
Okay. Very simple question. And I don't think it's too simple considering, but do you think we still face challenges today regarding inequality? And if so, what are some of those challenges? So let's get that out there, because everybody's coming from different fields and has seen it in has a different perspective. So let's start there. Again, do you think we still face challenges today regarding inequality? Pretty simple. But if so, what are some of the challenges? Let's go.
Yes. Hi.
I love it.
I do. For one of my biggest struggles personally that I've run into, natural hair in the workplace, in public. It seems that there's a negative outlook on natural hair in our natural state. Afros, are tight curls. And I feel like throughout the years, it's caused us to damage our hair to try and, fit into society. And I feel like that's a really big I feel like that's a really big issue that I've faced personally, is like going to job interviews with my natural state of hair and being judged by that because it doesn't look professional, you know? So I think that's a pretty big issue.
Interesting. Definitely glad you shot that out there. Okay, who else would like to chime in? Let's go. We're just gonna go around the clock here.
I'll go. I'm always probably going to come from the criminal justice aspect, but in the juvenile system, we certainly have continued to see inequality, both the disproportionate minority contacts with the system in the first place, the racial disparity as far as arrest, and of course incarceration. And while the Juvenile Justice Reform Program has done a great job of reducing detentions by, in the state of Indiana, over 70%, unfortunately, during that same time period of about 12 years, the rate of Black young men entering the system only changed. I think the figures were, at the start, they were 3 times more likely than their white counterpart to come to the court and be detained, arrested, incarcerated, and now it's 2.8. So even though there's been a great reduction in overall detentions, the racial disparities remain the same. So it's very important that we stay intentional and look at those things through a race equity lens to see, okay, why is that happening? Because we know the data shows us it is not because these young Black males are committing crimes at a higher rate than their white counterparts. So there's a definite issue there, and we've got to look at it, understand it, first of all, recognize it, admit it, and then do something to fix it.
Right. I think you know, when you look at the definition of inequality, it deals with biases. And you think about it, it's so many biases that we learn, you know, from different things we're involved in and different experiences. Yeah, inequality, I mean, it exists. And the unfortunate part about it, just listen to Miranda, where she's talking about, you know, with natural hair and, you know, the court systems, is a lot of people with some of these deep rooted, you know, subconscious biases are in positions of power or influence. And that's how that perpetuates that cycle to keep going, is because, I mean, it's just a bias. And I think one of the good things about a conversation like this is we've shied away from it so much to not talk about some of those things, to try to correct those biases. And we just, you know, it's sort of like one of those things that we haven't talked about, but I mean, we all experience it in some way, some way, somehow, some fashion, you know, whether you white, Black, you know, Asian, it's people just have biases. So I think inequality, it still exists. And, you know, the challenge behind it is not calling it what it is. You know, that's the biggest challenge, is trying to act like when we experience it, it's not what it is. And, you know, I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, but just to get back to the spirit of answering your question, yes, inequality, it's here. We face it every day. But I think it's just, you know, with the events that have happened last year and with George Floyd and what started in the spirit of this conversation, people are just now starting to open up about, you know, systemic things that have been there since the start of this country. So I'll say that, and then I'll shut up.
I definitely appreciate you sharing that, Mr. Hunter. I do believe that inequality still exists in America today. As Mr. Hunter pointed out, there are systemic and institutional challenges that have been in place for hundreds of years, whose main objective is to oppress and exploit people of color throughout this land. And I love that he said that we got to start calling things what they are, because words have meaning, words have power. So if we say inequality, that's a safe word, right? Allows people to come together and have safe conversations. But we talk about inequality in the truest sense, which use words like white privilege, racism, you know, oppression, exploitation, and that may scare people off, but them are the hard conversations we have to start to have in this country if we want to move the dialogue forward and bring about positive and change that's substantial and not just performative. Thank you.
Ms. Jones, then Brooke. Okay.
Just to chime in off of what Ms. Byrd said, just absolutely inequality does still exist, and that color line is still prevalent to this day. But just in the sense of natural hair, it's myself being a Black woman and being a newly natural Black woman. There is a stigma that comes with having natural hair, just the way that God created me. And that inequality of just like our names could be different, so that there's that stigma as well. Like when you go to apply for jobs, you may have a different name. So sometimes you have that stigma where it's like, oh, well, they will judge you off of your name, or like they don't need to take a second look at your resume. So absolutely, I think that inequality does still exist, and having conversations such as this is a way that we can go about breaking those barriers. Just these conversations with people of different ethnicities, different backgrounds, and things like that in education, it just helps broaden the conversation. Instead of just saying, oh, we have a problem, let's actually address the problem and find those solutions.
I completely agree. I really think that first steps are admitting there is an issue, and then second steps is what everyone's been saying, talking about it, getting different perspectives, hearing different perspectives, and not just as a white person taking only the white perspective of how things are, and taking perspectives of how it's affecting those people. And I think that at least starting the conversation is a good movement into actually making good change, positive change.
Okay. All right.
You know, it's interesting because when you think about just last year and being a part of, I mean, we're talking about the color line and if it still exists, right? This is the conversation that we've continued to have. And, you know, you go back to 2016 and Cap taking a knee and just like the impact of that, and people weren't ready then. You fast forward 4 years later to where we are last year with George Floyd killing, and the spark from that and how we have transitioned since then. But now it really is about, okay, like that happened last year. Now we're in a new year, right? And we're in COVID, and there's a whole bunch of other things that are going on right now. Not to just allow this to continue to be a conversation, but for us to really figure out a way to create and make change that will last, like lasting impact, lasting change.
Yeah. Tamika, may I say, I'm gonna say this. I graduated from Indiana University, 2005. I came in majoring in business, essentially not because I really wanted to, but I said, this is what I need to do to be accepted. This is what I need to do to be a professional. Go to the class in the morning. I'm maybe one of 3 African-Americans in the class down in Bloomington, trying to get in Kelly School. And then I was like, I really loved economics when I was at Cathedral, don't get me wrong. But then I got a taste of African-American studies down there. And when I tell you, the person who actually helped me make that decision was Melvin Van Peebles, Mario Van Peebles' daddy. And he made one of the first blaxploitation films in 1971 called Sweet Sweetback Badass Song. And it actually was, Indianapolis was one of the places that it premiered. Same with Dolomite. Indianapolis was one of the places that it premiered in the blaxploitation area. And I met him and talked a little bit. And I said, what else have I not known? And so I was also taking Spanish. And that goes back to 6th grade. And it made me break down the word Negro, right? Because in Spanish, you learn what the color actually, Negro means black. I said, well, wait a minute, Negro means black. If this has to do with Spanish, then how does this word pertain to this race? And then I began to do some research as to why are black people referred to Negroes and white people, because I thought it was just an issue of black and white. So what I'm getting to is there's a lot of different key points in that. I learned that in that subject matter. So the point is to get to this. I'm black. I'm African American, I'm colored, I'm Negro. But these was all changes during a social time in our country. Black didn't really start to come around until about late 1960s when it became an empowerment. Before that, you was either color or you was Negro, or Negro then your color. You know, and based on again the social pressure from again superior race. Now, however, this is probably going to charge a little bit, but when we say how can we remedy this? One of the things I tend to, you know, I've had conversations with my friends who are white. And I asked them, and Brooke and Judge, this might hit to you first, but I asked you, why are you white? Why do you say that you're white? What is the historical context beyond actually saying that you are white? Because the same applies. I was just watching the show Warrior on HBO. It's rated R, so don't watch it with your kids. I had to fast forward on Netflix. I mean on HBO Max, and I was noticing. I said, wait a minute, the Irish that came over, and they felt a certain kind of way. And you had the Dutch that was coming over, and they felt this kind of way. And when the Chinese came over, they was oppressed and called chinks and things like that. And it was a whole nother kind of race divide just over in San Francisco. So why is I'll start with Judge, then I want everybody to kind of remedy this on a very simplistic matter. It's like, why don't white people even question that? Because I have asked a white person, what's the difference between white and Caucasian? You know what I'm saying? And this is just to get the conversation started. But that's just one of the things which I remedy because it's right there in the smallest of details. That's just kind of where I've been kind of going, this remedy, how you identify yourself. You know what I'm saying? Because if we ignore a lot of, I think where we've gotten to is a lot of, you have some white people feel like I can't really, and I've dealt with it in the workplace, I've dealt with in the schools, like I feel like that's not my place because I'm white. And I think we've done that now. I think you got a lot more white people feeling more empowered because wrong is wrong, you know? And so, but when I think some people say, I can't do it because of what, it ignores the fact that many white people in the past had a lot to do with freeing the slaves, had a lot to do with anti-lynching bills, had a lot to do with passing things in documentation, and kind of ignores sometimes their efforts in a time where you could literally be lynched or killed yourself. And I think that history, that part of history of those who actually contributed, that, you know, white gets ignored because a lot of people feel like they can't touch it. I know I've kind of said a lot, but again, I think a lot of the remedy is actually understanding the past and how we've gotten here instead of just really going off of raw emotion. So that's my little 2 cents. Please chime in.
But I think you bring up a great point because you know, when you look at inequality, it's not just the color of, you know, a lot of times what we see because it's so prevalent is white and black. You know, inequality exists in so many, you know, different parameters. I mean, sometimes it's male against female, you know, in inequality. So, you know, I'm like moving past the color line because one of the things that I believe that it all exists is it starts with fear and ignorance. It starts with the fear of a certain type of person or what you can do in ignorance. And I think the one thing that 2020 has taught us is that it's just brought to the forefront things that have existed for years. You know, I remember when George Floyd was there and I have a 9-year-old and 10-year-old and I had to wrestle with, do I have that conversation with my son? And every black man in America knows what I'm talking about when I say that conversation. And I had to have that conversation. And what 2020 taught a lot of people was that, you know, you had some white or Caucasian, however you identify, you know, I don't want to offend anybody, but it taught them that, you know what, I'm ignorant about a lot of things. I don't see how the black experience is. And it taught them that, wow, you know, while I'm just going about my day and you know, and I think these, you know, sometimes what we call privileges, you know, it's this is just natural. This is normal to me. I didn't realize that, you know, a black male experience is totally different than a white male. I just bring this story up real quick and I'll move on. But I remember after the George Floyd, I was sitting out, this is a true story, by the way, with one of my sales managers. we sitting there, we both had on one of our station Nelia had both of our things on, and we saw police down the street. First thing he said was, let's go down there and see what's going on. And I said, no, I ain't going down there to see what's going on. And we just looked at each other, and this really happened. And he's like, he said, we kind of chuckled about it, but he said, I guarantee that was a comedy skit somewhere in somebody's stand-up, right? But that's the experience of it. He said, and he just looked at me and said, wow, you know what? He said, I just see how my experience is totally different than yours. Because when I see police, I'm immediately saying, let me go over there and see what's going on. My thing is, let them handle and see what's going on, because the events could turn really, they can turn different really, really quickly. So I say that, and it's not just a white and black, but I say, back to my original point, it derives from ignorance and fear. You see it so much, ignorance and fear. I mean, and that's what causes certain people in positions of influence to say, you know what, my mind and my scope of education is not large enough for me to understand that it's a different way, it's a different opinion, it's a different way of doing things. So what do I do if I'm in a place? I do what makes me comfortable. I put around me what makes me comfortable. I do and put systems in place that make me comfortable. And I'm not open to anybody else's way. So I can sit here and go about that all day, but hopefully, that just kind of gears in what we're talking about, because it's still a lot to learn, and I understand that. I know I'm ignorant about certain situations, but I'm not afraid to say that. What I don't know doesn't affect what I do. And going back to your point, I know I was trying to wrap up, but Eric, when I thought about it, because I graduated from IU too, minorities have been put in situations where they've been the minority so many times, and we've had to adapt to those situations. We understand what it is. We know that it's a different code, and it's like when you're the only black person, or you're the only Mexican, or you're the only Latino, or you're the only female in certain situations. It's a code that, I gotta adapt. And I got to make myself feel uncomfortable so other people feel comfortable. And we know that. So I don't want to sound like I'm preaching. So I'll push mute now because I can go all day.
Well, you got the preacher outfit on now.
Now, I could have been sitting out there smoking a cigar, but I wanted to be, I want to represent. So this is use my time.
Appreciate that.
Guys, let's go ahead. Let's chime in. What do you think about what remedy? What is the remedy?
I think you made a good point, Mr. Saunders. Speaking about the historical context to begin with, and you pointed something out briefly, and along with Mr. Hunter, we said that inequality isn't just about race. It's not just black and white. And I think when you mentioned the historical aspect of it, prior to the 1850s, the Irish and the Italians was not considered white in America.
Right.
They was considered the in-betweens. So it wasn't so they worked alongside black people. So when we look at the color line and we look at the condition of black people in America from a historical standpoint, those Irish and Italians oftentimes help black people, even to this day, or because of their situation and predicament back then, they hate black people. So it's either one end of the spectrum or they're on this end of the spectrum, right? And when you talk about Caucasian or white, from a historical standpoint, my view is that Caucasian is the classification of race, while white is a statement of power and position. And to me, that's the difference between Caucasian and white.
Say that again.
Mm-hmm.
Say that again, because I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah, right.
I said that Caucasian is a classification of race, while being white is a statement of position and power.
Now, Brooke, I see you done unmuted yourself, so go ahead.
And the judge can correct me if I'm wrong, because he'll probably know more specifically about this. But when you talked about the difference between Caucasian and white, I automatically thought of the naturalization law of 1906, I'm pretty sure, 1906. And it said only white people could become citizens of the United States. And there was a Japanese man who was applying to be a citizen, and back then it was white or black. And so the in-betweens that y'all were talking about, technically he fell into the white category because he was not Black. And he went all the way to the Supreme Court trying to become a citizen, and they denied him because he was not white. And so I think that the definition of white, again, is a power standard, and it's so fluent and can be interpreted different ways. And it just shows that the government sets laws, sets standards, and then changes them to accommodate for what they want in power.
Go ahead, Judge.
I'm, boy, very interested. Every topic here comes up. I'm just, it's striking me. But someone asked me, why am I white? Why do I consider myself white? You didn't mention my grandparents. All four of them came from Greece. And of course, they quickly knew to assimilate to white to make sure they took care of, or got the advantage, and their 7 children got the advantage of white privilege. And when you look at the history of race, and I only really looked at this the last couple of years. I was pretty ignorant on this, even after my grandson was born. My little blonde-haired, blue-eyed daughter gave birth to a Black grandson, and unfortunately his father died when he was about 9, and I didn't know how to have that conversation with a young Black man. I didn't know. I had to leave that to his other grandfather. But my point here is, when you look at the history of race, we need to realize that race is made up. It was a specious science. It has no reality. And it was made up by white European men because they wanted to, we've talked about power, you talked about white privilege. They wanted to control things, and they did. And they did a heck of a job. And the way it was, it's a long, long story. And I'd love to bring on a young lady, 73 years old, from New Orleans that could do this much better than me, from the People's Institute of Survival and beyond. But if we really look at it, race is a made up specious science, and it was made to give whites advantage at the to the disadvantage of our Black brothers and sisters.
Absolutely. I just want to piggyback off of basically what you often saying, the white versus Caucasian. I think back to the incident that happened in New York earlier last year, where the Black gentleman was bird watching, and the white young lady, she called the cops on him because of like the dog incident. I believe that sometimes white people can use that term as a way of power. Just, you know, that privilege and that authority or whatever. Like with her calling the cops and saying, like, there's this Black man that's attacking me, she used her color as a weapon. And I think the way that we can remedy this is through education. I think that is the quickest way. I think that is the most efficient way, is to just educate people. And with today's time, there's, in my opinion, there's no reason people should not be educated. Like with social media, with, you know, conversations like this, there's so many different outlets and avenues for people to get educated. And especially with, you know, just Caucasian, like Mr. Jackson said, Caucasian is to just like identify who you are, your ethnicity, whereas white can be used as power, it can be used as a weapon. And I think that has been shown, has been highlighted a lot in this last past year, excuse me.
So when you guys say educate, what does that mean? Because I feel like we keep throwing out the word education, like this has been something last year, right?
Yeah.
I mean, think about it, for a majority of us, George Floyd happened. And what happened? We get a lot of people asking, what's your story? Tell us. What have you had to experience? What is it like when the cops come? Like, you know, Jason talked about, what is it like when you see a cop pull behind you when you're driving? Or matter of fact, you end up going somewhere and they walk in the store. Like, what is that feeling like? So we keep saying education, and, you know, we have these books that, hey, read this book, but from a real education standpoint, and maybe this is an answer, maybe there's not an answer to this, but from a real education standpoint, how do people get educated?
The willingness to
experience it, how do you educate?
May I give a shout out real quick then to child advocates and their Undoing Racism program. You know, it's I remember doing, when it first started, some years, oh my goodness, But it's at that time, so many people have come to me, have you did the Untitled Racism? Have you? Yes. But not only that, again, majoring in African American studies, we had some great professors down at Indiana University who actually we had to break it down to actually understand that on the collegiate level. And people, my own classmates, Black or other, what are you gonna do with it? How are you gonna monetize African American studies? I really did not know. What I did know was it had provided me with a whole nother lens and context to be able to kind of see through it. But the problem is now getting in front of people in position who are actually establishing these policies. But then you're getting in position to where you're changing the culture. You know, it's interesting, like I said, I know Brother Huther worked for Wish TV. My wife will tell you, sometimes I look at the news and I'm just like, why does everybody just sound the same? Why does everybody sound this accepted? And then, like I said, to the point of, I know I'm just kind of skipping somewhere, but it still just kind of frustrates me because, again, with Colin Kaepernick, did what he did, he put the whole thing on Black. And then now we got to the point where everybody's saying, and even much love and shout out to Tamika, because I know that they took a stand during a time when it was really unpopular. Like, you did it at the extent to where you don't even know if somebody might fire you. Like they did for my guy who played, Craig Hodgins, who played for the Bulls, and Muhammad used to play for the Nuggets, you know. And I mean, so it's okay. I'm kind of going off, but you guys pick up. Ms. Jones, I know you had your hand raised.
Yeah, just to answer Tamika's question, for me, it's on the fundamental level of educate. It's just to talk. Like, when you have your white homegirls, you have your white homeboys that you're kicking it with, you're talking to them with. I've had, when George Floyd, that incident happened, I had several of my white friends like, oh, I'm so sorry, your life matters. Now, did my life not matter when you met me? Like, where disconnect? So just having a real conversation and telling them, like, hey, I fear for my unborn son's life, you know, or just, I don't have to give you a book. I don't have to give you literature because, quite frankly, in my opinion, it is not my job to educate every white person that I come encounter with. However, I do feel that, like, if you're my friend and I am your friend, we can have a real conversation about why is it not acceptable for me to come to your house, but for you to come to mine? Like, why is that not acceptable for you to date my brother, but my brother can't date you? For you know what I'm saying? Just like between interracial dating. So just educating is just having a conversation. If they're your friend, like they say you're your friend, just give them the honest facts, give them the truth. Of course, you want to be kind doing it, but it's just having a real conversation with them at the very basic fundamental level of education, is just explaining to them, you know, our differences. And then living
it just like that, appreciating the differences. And it's interesting because even what you said it's kind of reaffirmed by the law. And I think I'm gonna throw alley-oop over here to Judge, because when the law, here's my feelings, like, because we know of these biases, now we know that these are things that are fundamentally wrong. In my eyes, when I see people in position, especially in the law, to me, it's just there's a lack of integrity for the law that's been shown over and over and over again. And I heard you, Judge, say that you've been doing more racial inclusion and things like that. You know, when did things really kind of become eye-opening? I mean, when did things kind of just become apparent to you? In terms of
can I say one thing? I just, before we lose this point, I know you alley-ooping, but I want to go back to answer your question, Tamika, because I think that's a really, you know, you said we say educate, everybody says educate. Here's the one thing that I feel that you do, and I don't care what it is in anything. If you have a problem or things exist, the first thing you need to do is acknowledge that that problem is there. So we can talk around it all day, but if people don't acknowledge that it exists, then we go nowhere. Because guess what? That elephant just walks in the room and people act like it's not there. So that's the first thing I want to say. So it's if you have a person who doesn't acknowledge that systemic racism and inequality exists, it's nothing we can do about it. We can talk to, we're blue in the face. If nobody sees it or wants to acknowledge or act like it doesn't exist, it's nothing we can do. It's no program, it's no conversation that would ever jolt them out of that way of thinking. The other thing I was going to say was, you know, Ms. Jones, you said something about, yeah, it's not my responsibility to educate every white person. You're right. It's not our responsibility. But you know what? One thing I think about is just like, Christianity. As a Christian, it's my job to live my life and operate in a way that is pleasing unto God to everything I do. So I think about that, in how I operate as a Black man, that I realize that, I'm on the shoulders of other people. So it is my responsibility to make sure that everyone I come in contact with who may be suffering from, let me say it, white privilege or, things that they've always been given to them. I do believe, number one, it is my responsibility to operate in a way that shows you that, you know what, I can't fix everybody, but I am who I am and I know whose I am. So I operate that way to make sure that, if that's you that got a problem. That's you that deals with ignorance. I might not be able to get you a conversation or get you in a way that brings you out of what you're in, but I try to operate in every way and everyone I come in contact with to make sure that, I leave their bucket fuller than it was when I came to them. So, and I say that. The other thing I was going to say was, people sometimes, going back to the acknowledge, I hear people say, well, the country wasn't this and it wasn't that. And, every white person is not racist. And I don't see how they say it's systemic. And I stop them right here. And I say, go Google the 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment. Why does that exist? Because when this country was founded, they didn't even look at certain people, not just Black, but at women as well, because you can go down to the other amendments. They didn't look at them as equals. That's the whole basis of inequality, because when the country was founded, they didn't see certain people of color and women, they didn't see them to have the same privileges. So I go back to the educators, you got to know where the problem exists from to even start that, Tamika, to try to educate someone. But it's just like if you want to argue with, religion, politics, some people you just cannot change because they go back to what we start off with. If they're thinking with their emotions, it's nothing I can do. It's sort of why I will never argue with a Trump supporter, because I know that you deal with a certain other facts that I don't see, that we don't see. So it's like you can believe and see what you see, but I will never be able to change that thought. So I don't even waste my time to do that, so I might have screwed stuff up, but it is what it is. So there you go. I just had to get that out. Now you go back to you, Eric, and you can lob it to the judge.
Segment, and I thank you, Brother Hunter. I wanted to go to Miranda real quick. I see we went from gold to we have an image over and so I can see your motivation flaring up right now. So where we at with the artwork right here?
Okay, would you like me to explain my concept or like to the full, or you just want me to
tell me where you're at right now, because we're gonna have you come back towards the end and kind of when it's complete.
All right, well, as of right now, we have a Black woman with her hands about to hold something. So yeah, use your imagination to and then we can revisit. Right now I'm just trying to put clothes and a rough sketch of what I'm doing.
All right. Thank you. Now, appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing how this shapes out. Now, Judge and Brooke, I saw your hands go before I went that way. Go ahead and chime in, and then I want everybody to kind of tell about their own personal stories with inequality.
Okay, the last gentleman that spoke, I'm sorry, I can't see the names here. Absolutely agree 100% with everything you said. It'd be nice though, as Christians, if we didn't have to, still think, well, white evangelical or Black Christians or Black church or white church, but you're right. we have to recognize that our systems, the systemic racism isn't because our systems are broken. It's not because our systems are broken. Our systems are working just as they were set up, just as that gentleman said, by our founding fathers when the black man, if I recall right, was considered 3/5 of a person or however they did it. So until we recognize that and look at it for what it is and how intentional it was and get intentional about changing it, then we can have all the conversations we want. And back to your question to me, and I do want to brag on the judiciary a little bit. And I know Indiana is a very red state, and we unfortunately don't have enough diversity in the judiciary. But our judiciary did a wonderful thing bringing the People's Institute up. You mentioned the Undoing Racism workshop. They provided that to every judge that wanted it, and a lot of probation officers, prosecutors, law enforcement. And it's been a wonderful thing. Is it an end all? Of course not. But boy, the things that you learn and realize there, and it's wonderful because usually it's about 22 people and very diverse groups. So you get to really hear and have an honest discussion. If anybody's done it, I'm sure you understand that. But anyway, I've talked too long right now too, but I just agree 100%. We need to really recognize what the issue is, what the problem is, and then we can talk all we want, but we've got to take some action.
So with that being said, Judge, and I know you said when we have action, and you brought up, again, it was intended this way. So, a lot of times, and even with this impeachment trial going on right now, you constantly hear the word, that's not constitutional. This is unconstitutional. Well, sometimes it feels like the Constitution is constitutional, because of, like I said, if this was created this way, then do you feel like then we need to start to put some new amendments in place and some to really kind of, and to me, that really sounds like a revolutionary concept in itself, to where to really draw people together to say, if we need to constitutionally shut out this hatred, then, or maybe everybody just needs to take time to actually read it, to hear what it says, see what it says. Because I'm telling you, I had not taken a look at it probably since high school. So, what do you think our approach there needs to be with rules and laws that have kind of kept us down,
Well, that's all important, but I don't think we can legislate ourselves out of this because it's too ingrained in the system. We've got the institutions that are all feeding into the criminal justice system, and we need to really, first of all, we need to get much more diverse from the judiciary on down, and we have to really look at who we're electing, who we're appointing, who we're hiring, all of that. And then we have to have honest discussions and say, okay, why is there such a racial disparity? Look at it. You've got data you can look at. Where is it coming from? Are they drug offenses? I remember, you probably all know, oh gosh, I forget his name. The Supreme Court Justice up in Minnesota was one of the Purple People Eaters. The defensive end, most valuable player. Hey, you guys help me here? Marsh, anyway, wonderful first Black Supreme Court Justice up in Minnesota. He said the other day on a podcast I was on, he said, we as judges, we need to look at people and say, okay, now, is this someone we're afraid of? Or is this someone we're just mad at? And, you don't put someone you're just mad at in prison. It's ridiculous. So I'm getting on my soapbox there a little bit, but when I think of his name, I'll come back and tell you, but I'm sure you've all heard it. But that's some of the actions I think we can take at this point. Legislation is important, but I'm not sure. I think you could change sentencing laws quite a bit, and that might help somewhat.
Hey guys, if you're listening to this live on Facebook, if you're enjoying what you're hearing, can you go ahead and hit that love button for us so we can see that you're enjoying the content?
Stephen Maxwell.
And Stephen Maxwell. So and then Brooke, you had something that you wanted to get off your chest.
I just had a question. I fully agree and 100% stand behind we need to have more education. But Autumn said, I understand again, Autumn said it's not her responsibility to educate every single white person. But as a white person, my question is, if I want to get educated, if I want to have these hard conversations, if I want to make change, how am I to do that without, because growing up in the South, in Houston specifically, I was blessed enough to have diverse friends and I knew them well enough to have these conversations. But there were some times when I would ask questions and I would get the response, it's not my job to educate you. And I understand that, like, but I want to know how else am I to get educated?
So in my opinion, it's a two-sided coin. If you have that desire to get educated and you have Black friends, absolutely engage. For instance, like this is a way for you to get educated. However, there are books, there are things out there that's been there for years. This racism is not something new. George Floyd is not the first person to die because of police brutality. This is something that's been going on for years. So if you just take a look back, and forgive me for saying this, it's just, I do believe, like Jason said, you know, as a Christian, we spread the gospel, right? It's our responsibility to bring people into Christ. You know, that's just as what we believe. However, again, it's the information's there for you. You just have to research it. You just have to go and find it. And of course, like, I'm not saying that I don't educate white people. If a friend of mine comes to me and asks me about my experience, asks me like, hey, where do I start? I will give you a starting point that I know of. But again, there's the internet, there's Google, there are African American studies programs in colleges. There's ways that you can go get that information on your own and not, so Black people don't have to feel that burden to teach you or to educate you ourselves when, of course, the information is out there.
I think some of it too, it's just relationship. You know,
Yeah.
like when you build those relationships, and
Mhm.
I just think back, I've shared this story with last year being in the bubble, and with some of my, we had the opportunity to live in different places, right, within the bubble, but I chose to live with 3 other people that I don't know at all. And because of having to stay in the same environment, you know, you start learning tendencies, and you know, we were all going different routes and different places, but at the end of the night we would all end up in the living room just talking about whatever, talking about the game, talking about other players, just talking about the whole, you know, scene. But it was interesting because at one point I was doing my hair, and then one of our other coaches, who happened to be African American too, was doing her hair, and the other 2 girls that were in there, young ladies, were white. And so we just got to talking about hair. And so like Miranda started a conversation about hair, but we were in a safe place, a safe space to talk about hair and to talk about what it takes to do our hair and how, you know, like all the different textures and styles and all of that. But I know this is just a conversation right here, but because we were in a place of comfort with one another, because the relationship aspect, because it was one that we knew coming out of that, they were educated, we were educated too, because it's like, well, they're asking about our hair, we started asking questions about their hair. And so it was like, and this is so, in a sense, minute, because it's not like we're not talking about race and all of that, but at the same time, to be able to have a conversation like that and to feel comfortable enough with people that literally you just met. I mean, it hasn't been that many months that we were together, but I think the relationship piece is huge. And then it doesn't feel, like Autumn said, a burden. It doesn't feel like a burden, because I honestly feel, and even in this conversation, it's great conversation, because I honestly feel like each one of us on the panel, we want to learn. We want to learn to be better, not only for ourselves, but even more importantly for our future kids, for our kids, for our grandkids, for the future generation that's coming behind us.
Right. And Judge, it was Alan Page.
Alan Page. Yep.
Alan Page.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dewan.
Yeah.
Hey, Brooke, and I wanted to say to you, there was a comment on our thread here. Ms. King has said, thank you for your sincerity and your question. And I think that was probably said, and Ms. King, you can correct me if I'm wrong, listening, just for the simple fact that not too many people care to know, or won't go so much as even to ask, or won't even think that there's something necessarily wrong, but it's just with essentially, you know, that sincerity, it can be felt. And even with, you know, with so much struggle, you know, being Black and people of color, you know, we know how things feel. So that came off as, it's not came off as genuine, it's genuine. Because ultimately, because what we're talking about is something that's been so severe to who we as people, that we're doing things that are just very inhumane to one another. And, you know, when we talk about the whole situation with George Floyd, you know, that wasn't inhumane as much as people saying, well, he deserved it. You know what I'm saying? It's just really kind of brought out the inhumanity. And again, and that, you know, and for so many, we walk day to day with trauma. You know what I'm saying? This is my dad. It's, you know, I'm gonna give a poem at the end. I'm dedicated to him. He lost him 6 months ago to violence. But when I walked up on the scene, the first person that greeted me was a police officer. And do you know that because of just, I've never hugged a police officer, and because I was breaking down, this police officer caught me. And it was a part of me saying to myself, you know what I'm saying? And the sad thing about that was I'm like, do I push away or do I embrace the hug? In the midst of the fact that my father is now gone, this daggone bias on whether I can trust this person in a uniform is still on or in the front of my mind. But my father's gone. That's how, I mean, for me, that's how heavy that this could possibly be. And again, you talk, and then also, like we talk about trauma, Drejon Reed, that young man was murdered right around the corner from where me and Mr. Hunter live. I was riding my bike. I heard the gunshot. You know, and so again, those are just two stories. And so again, I say that with the education is this, I've seen so much unnecessary death. I've seen so much things just that have haunt us as people of color. I've seen things white, Black, Hispanic, that just being in touch with humanity in where the system has essentially put us. And then at the same time, if I got an interview tomorrow, if I got to work tomorrow.
Yep.
And so that also back to W.E.B. Du Bois, as he also talked about the double consciousness theory. Okay, I wrote my senior paper about that, and I did a video and everything, and I never knew that it would be so prevalent to how I live my life today and how I begin to see things today. Which meaning me as the Negro is torn at the soul to whether he is Negro or whether he is American, and those two things are warring at each other at the very same time. So we as Black people, a lot of times, again, I'm the cathedral grad, I would go hang out with my friends who from addicts. Y'all, you trying to act white? Or then, you know, or you're not Black enough, and this, that, and the other. And we don't realize that I can point to people who've gone to private schools all over the country have dealt with similar situations, even across generations. I went back last year and spoke for Black History Month, and a young lady whispered something in my ear that rang true to what I was going through from 97 to 2001. And so, like I said, I just go back to the fact that we appreciate that genuine question, because you have so many people, white and Black, because all Black folks not competent. I said it. You can quote me, put it in your paper. Jason Havwitz TV, call me again. I'll tell them that too. But all Black folk ain't competent, because for so long you've been doing this, because we have to adhere to the American side to succeed. And so when I get to that American side to succeed, oftentimes too many people look down on the folks that all I think I know is that Negro side. All right. Now we're not going to even get into the N-word conversation on who uses this and the other. That's further down in education. But what were you going to say?
I was just going to comment on the story with your father, just that historical mistrust between police officers and Black people. It goes back to we were actually just learning about this in class. police officers actually being founded as slave hunters, and like they were founded on going back and getting slaves and then bringing them back to the South. And so just having that as the foundation just creates that historical mistrust. And so then you have that second consciousness, as in, I'm getting pulled over, I need to act white or fit into the norm so that I don't get in trouble for sneezing. And obviously, personally, I've never had that experience, and I don't think that, but I know that that's the norm specifically for Black men. And I'm sorry, honestly. And it just baffles me, I guess, that that has to happen in order for you to drive away safely.
Yeah,
But can I say this? You know, kudos to you, Brooke, for even being that transparent. So I just want to acknowledge that for you being transparent like that. And you talk about educate, but it's I don't know you. It's our first time meeting, but it's more of that, of acknowledging that it's certain experiences that happen that you're just unaware of. And I can see that I can't remember who said it, but having a sincerity about you to learn just about these experiences. And I just think back, when I worked for Radio 1, we had a Latino station. We had where we had a Hispanic Latino morning show. We had Tom Joyner, which is an African-American show. We had a young hip hop show. And then we had a contemporary show with two big Trump supporters. So you have four of the groups. I mean, that could be from different backgrounds, different experiences. And I can remember that it would be one thing that happened, and you would have four different conversations in the same building. I mean, and it would be to a point where one person could be saying something, and it's truly their experience, that could be degrading and very condescending to another person. To the point where it constantly put us in a phase of, we had to always learn that some things that might be normal to me, or some things that I might say, might be very degrading and harmful and hurtful to someone else. But going back to you, Brooke, I had to understand that, and I had to do what it took to that it takes on an ongoing basis. And not saying that I understand it, but you start to understand that it's certain things that certain cultures look at as it's degrading. It's certain reasons that you don't say certain things, or you don't certain people don't even shake hands about business. That could be something that's degrading to them. So I like this conversation, but it's if a person's unwilling to take a look in the mirror and say, you know what, I'm ignorant about certain things, and I have to do what I have to do to learn. And it's not always in a book. Sometimes it's by mistake. Sometimes you learn by mistake. But be willing to be that person to learn and understand that, I'm not a perfect person. I try to live, in that life, but sometimes it may be a time where I may do or say the wrong thing, but you try to keep that to a minimum. So
Autumn, I noticed again, you are a creative director, and then I wanted to flip to Mr. Jackson. I know you that you are president of your lodge. What are some stories that you guys might have seen, just again, kind of speak to the subject matter?
I have to think about that. Go ahead, Mr. Jackson.
Oh no, you go ahead, ladies first.
What y'all tell?
I think some stories that I may have.
There's some things that you might have just noticed as being in your expertise.
Give me a second. Let me sit on it.
Okay. I would say, not just from being the president of the lodge, but being an elected official, right? And to piggyback off what you said earlier, Mr. Saunders, about double consciousness. I'm glad you brought that up, because I believe that you can't talk about the color line of the boys without also talking about double consciousness, right? Because double consciousness is how a Black person in America views a color line, right? So depending on if they see themselves as Black in America, or they see themselves as an American. That right there will determine how they view the color line and how they view the systems in place that others would say keeps us down. They would view it as, no, they don't keep us down. They keep us up. Arise and ties, lift our boats. They say things like that. So I'm glad you brought up double consciousness and being an elected official. At times, to be honest and transparent, I struggle with the double consciousness. For one, you're a Black man in America, right? Dealing with Black issues, being a Black father, being a Black man, but at the same time, being an elected official. And we know that politics is a white male society. So I find myself consciously, constantly, I should say, censoring myself in certain spaces, not speaking in a certain manner or style in certain spaces, not rocking the boat in certain spaces. And then, I feel conflicted. I'm like, I get home and I beat myself up like, oh, are you being fake? And I gotta find that thin line between standing up and speaking for your people, representing your people, and defending your people, but not losing your place at the table. So I'll say that's definitely been a struggle. So I would say the double consciousness in connection with the color line is definitely a thought that never leaves my mind on a daily basis.
You about to make me have a Steve Harvey moment, man. Let me first. Coming from an elected official, that really kind of takes a lot to just even say that, man, because like you said, it's a war within yourself, and where you're making decisions that impact again the community. And again, I think a lot of people don't even consider that, that you have to, even war with that. And like I said, it's that color line ain't always straight. It's crooked, it's twist, it's turns, it's up, it's down, it's depressing, and then at the same time, between all that, you got to take responsibility for whatever you do or say.
I think that's in everything, though. I mean, from that position, but I feel like in all of our positions, we're consciously having to make sure you don't say the right thing, make sure you wear the right thing, make sure you got your hair the right way, make sure, like everything is a judgment, everything. And that's, I don't really feel like, probably more prominent from a race standpoint, but I feel like all of us have been in situations where we've been judged. You might be too young, or you're too old, or you don't know enough about this topic, or hey, not everybody had an African American studies degree, so we don't know that much about African American. Let's go to the one that got the degree. I mean, I feel like you're always living in a world of trying to find that balance. And I mean, I struggle with it. I struggled with it big time. I'm getting better, and I feel like our organization has done, Pacers Sports and Entertainment has done a really good job of providing the safe places or safe spaces. But I still have that in different environments that I go in of, wanting to support and wanting to say, but, kind of the Jason, what you said, the elephant in the room that comes in, it's like, you don't want to touch it. Is now the time to take a bite right now, or should I just wait until later? So yeah, I know Autumn, you had something to say.
Yeah, for me, like just in the creative space, as a Black creative, I have to constantly think, am I a Black creative or am I a creative? Especially for me, because in the space where I am right now, I create for the kingdom of God. So I have to take myself and my color out of it and say, this is bigger than just me being Black. This is about me getting people to Christ. So I take, for example, there was a time where I went to a predominantly white church just to tour their facility, right? And there, I didn't know if they had any stigmas about me, if they had an idea of what they thought I was, because prior to us meeting, we only spoke via email. So I wasn't sure if they had their biases about me, but just going there, I had to say, now, let me talk in my white voice, or let me dress a certain way, so that double consciousness just creeps up. Let me present myself a certain way, just so I can be perceived as like being educated, or being perceived as I'm worthy of your time, or whatever the case may have been. But I take that double consciousness, and how do I try to remove myself from that? And again, to not just be a Black creative, but to be a creative in general. And I find that a lot of times in the creative space, they want you to, because I'm a Black woman, they want you to target Black women specifically. Well, why can't I create a campaign or do something that is generic, that's for anyone that's going to enjoy this or like this? So I find in my community, they really want you to do something like, how can we impact the urban community rather than just something that's just impactful in general? So it's a fine line, and it's just figuring out just who I am and what do I want to bring forth as far as just being a director, being a creative director. What is it that I want to do?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are about 20 minutes out. A couple things. Miss Miranda's artwork is coming together quite nicely. I hope you guys are enjoying this art happening right before your eyes. That's something, guys, we've been doing since me and Tamika, we connected about 3 years ago now. Oh my God, when we was doing First Fridays, the only youth open mic in the city, and I miss it. I miss being able to influence youth with poetry. We had the first Indy Youth Poet Laureate, bless that place, young poets who traveled the nation. We got a poet we can't wait to see again who's 9 years old and absolutely fearless. So again, when we say that artwork and just even creating places where people can express themselves, this right here, we have been able to do just that. And so as we are getting ready, kind of close, I know this is going to take some details, but now, what are our solutions? What does that even look like? Let's go. Who wants to start us off with that? And yeah, go ahead and take your time, because it's not a quick say. And if you're listening on the internet, on the Facebook, go ahead, and if you have any solutions, please go ahead and chime in there as well, Brother Hunter.
I was going to say we talked about some of the things as far as solutions. I think number one, things are not going to change overnight, but I think we all have a responsibility to, number one, charity starts at home. So affect the people that are in your close circle. If you hear something that is bias or, unconscious bias, and it's someone that you have a relationship with, I think, from this conversation, you should be compelled to talk about those things with those people. So, and I understand that everybody is not that type of person that can address it. So I think the first thing is let's do what we can do in the small circles. Everybody's not going to be a change maker that is going to reach the masses. Also is, when you have a person, who pulls you to the side and admits that they're ignorant about certain things, you take the time to, to uplift them in a way that, that they feel compelled to feel a little bit more confident or competent about, some of their ignorances. Also, I think just keeping the conversation going, but when you see things that are not right, I mean, no, you can't always be the angry Black man, but you have to address some of those things. And that's not just saying black and white, but that's also when you have certain people who are chauvinist or, feel certain way or about females. But, sometimes we just kind of let it go and say we're not in confrontation, but understand by not addressing the problem, you are part of the problem. By not saying certain things, you're part of that. So yeah, sometimes you might, come across as the person of, oh, I can't say this, but you at least address those types of things. And sometimes fear of losing your job or losing your status or being, labeled that person. So I think it's just the small things that we can do to affect our circles. That's part of the solution. But my biggest thing I say is when you see certain things that exist or someone who might not have a voice, but you're being that person, you're being a voice for the voiceless. I think that will help to change things small step at a time.
I think I completely agree, Jason. That's a great point. But also, it's dealing with your own traumas and your own biases that you may have. And also, just when you're at the having like a family conversation, you're at the family table, and you hear somebody say something, because especially like for my white counterparts, I think it's important that you say like you tell your family that is not okay, for one thing, because so many times you'll have the younger generation with the older generation, and the older generation is continuing to say these bad things and have these biases. I think if we have that conversation with the older generation and say like, hey, I understand that's what y'all did back then, but now we're moving forward, we're progressing. Now, like, it wasn't cool then, but it's especially not cool now. And I think, just like you said, just in those small circles, you have to say something, because if you don't say something, that means you agree with what's happening. So you have to be able to speak up and deal with your own traumas and realize like, okay, am I being biased here, or is this really something that I see? And take that in and learn from that.
I love what Ms. Jones and Mr. Hunter has said thus far. As they pointed out, conversation is important. But I would say when we talk about inequality and racism, we first got to understand that inequality and racism is as American as baseball and apple pie. It's been engraved in the social fabric of this country for hundreds of years. So we know it's not going to change overnight, no matter how long we talk, how much we talk. But from a political standpoint, we have to look at changing legislation at the local levels all the way up to the federal levels, advocating for change. A study said that if the federal minimum wage was just raised at $10.10 an hour, that would get 4.6 million people out of poverty. That's a huge number. Expanding things like the Earned Childhood Tax Credit, that would get 4 million children out of poverty. If we invest in early childhood education, that $20,000 investment on the front end would save us from spending $30,000 on the back end when they're in prison at Penalty Correctional Facility. So there are certain things we can advocate for, we can fight for, we can raise awareness for, and I believe that we're on the good path. Everyone on this call right here, I can see is doing positive things in their communities, in their circles. So I'm definitely excited at the progress that's taking place. And I really believe that a change is going to come.
We got Brooke and then Judge George.
I agree. I think ideally end game would be being able to see people as people and looking not only at color. I think Autumn was talking about it earlier. She was saying, I don't want to be just a Black creator. I want to be a creator. And I think it's good to appreciate the differences and perspectives. Like obviously earlier, y'all were talking about being able to have one experience and then someone else from a totally different place would have the same experience. And I think that's the experience of being a Black person in today's America. And I think that at the end of the day, we still need to appreciate that and be able to see the differences and then be able to grow from that and being able to respect each other as human beings.
Well, as you can probably tell from my reluctance to get in at first, I wish I had the solution, but a couple things I do know, having been able to go through some other places in the nation that are doing some pretty successful things, is number one, we need to get into schools. We need to quit sending Black young boys to juvenile court when we could do something much more productive to help them. We need to educate teachers on the difference. Unfortunately, I'm from Anderson, Indiana. 45% or a little more than that of our students at Anderson High School are youth of color. And unfortunately, they don't see enough teachers and administrators that look like them. And until we address that problem, get educated, get the teachers, administrators, students all hearing the real history of race, things that they really need to learn. And as everyone's mentioned here, things that we really need to recognize, why has it been 150 years and we've had such little progress? Well, because I don't think we faced the problem. And I know as a white man, a lot of white people that are like myself, we are probably a little reluctant to make the sacrifices necessary to make this a much more equitable playing field for everyone. And I really appreciate being able to be part of this and listening to all of you today. You've really taught me a lot. Thank you.
And thank you all. Tamika, what you have to say? What's your solution?
I think I agree with everybody. I'm over here taking notes, and one of the main reasons that we started the conversation was to be able to have a space like this where people could come and share, and from the Facebook and from our followers and listeners and inners, just to be able to have a conversation. But we always end every conversation with asking for a solution. Because if we continue to just talk about what's going wrong without trying to move toward a solution, and there are some that are going to be like, it might not happen now. It might not happen tomorrow. It might not happen in our time, but we can at least start the process. And we can, as like a judge, I love what you said. And I think that applies to a lot of people. It's a sacrifice. It's a sacrifice to make change. And unless people, and this is not just in legislation and and our elected officials, it's not just there, it's all of us collectively coming together and really, all right, what do we want to change? What's the low-hanging fruit that we can deal with now, and that we can, by 2021, the end of 2021, we can make a change in this, and really being able to come up with different areas. And so like, I appreciate you guys coming on, being able to have this conversation, being able to talk honestly. This is the first one of 2021. So like, we hit it out of the park. I want to thank Veronica, because Veronica Watkins, literally, I hired her a couple weeks ago. I was like, hey, put this together, because last year I did it. And Eric and I, and trying to do all the work on top of a full-time jobs with an S, it got to be too much. But I love, just being able to have the conversation that we have, being able to talk about change. I do believe, and one of the things that everybody out there doesn't know, but one of the things that we've created is we've basically created a resource bubble from the 65 panelists from last year, all the panelists that we have this year, being able to have a conversation, but also being able to tap in different things that are going on in the community and how we can continue to work with each other and build, so people don't have to work in silos and feel like I have to do all of this on my own. This is not a one-man job, one person, one woman. This is not a one-person job. This is a collective unit, all of us coming together and figuring out what can we attack for 2021? What can we attack for 2022? And then like, we just continue this until I always go back to impact, until we impact as many people as we can.
And I would say this was a part of our solution, and it was born out of COVID, for us to find a way to stay connected and to see each other's faces. I don't know about y'all, but I got sandals on right now. I'm sure somebody got a pair of shorts on right now, but it's just, we have to adapt to this whole different culture the best way we can, because I think even in the midst of COVID, we was all scared just of COVID alone. But what got me was when I saw that even in the midst of COVID, when we're supposed to be in all this together, racism still had to have its way. And that's when I said, this is absolutely too selfish now. And it's undeniable. In the midst of a human crisis, racism still had to get attention. And that's when I think, and so I'll just to let our viewers know, you might not be on the panel, but you are very much a part of the show. I like what Ms. Jones said: racism is a breach in our humanity. And until we decide to live beyond race, we will always miss the opportunity to be humane with each other. let's see, you got a nice little shout out, real talk. Mr. Jackson, Miranda, your painting is everything. Great conversation. And, again, so I want you guys to know that we're connecting you guys as well. So this was, again, a very dynamic, this conversation, a very transparent conversation. I don't think I've been in a lot of conversations about race, and sometimes they kind of seem stale and a little bit generic and a little cliche. I felt that this was completely opposite. We have a wide range of people here. We got people in leadership roles that are making impact, and that's a difference. So again, if we live in a country that's been able to institutionalize hate, then I'm sure that we got to find a way for it to institutionalize love and doing the right bars. I know, right? Bars, right? Nobody's heard that. I'm gonna end it with some bars too. But Miranda, what's happening?
Hello. All right.
Okay.
I'm gonna try to get this to where it's not glaring. I don't know if everybody can see this. Everybody see that?
Yeah, we see it.
We see it, and we.
That's really nice.
Okay, so I'm not completely done. I'm probably going to end up adding a whole bunch more. So if anybody wants to check it out, I linked my Instagram to my name. But so far, the concept that I went with, I have a Black young lady, and she's holding an infinity symbol that is half white and half black. Because honestly, we're not going to end the racist stigmatism at all unless we all work together. We all want that sense of peace and that sense of belonging. And without one willing to learn and one willing to teach and us come together as one, until we're ready for that as a whole. And I feel like this is an amazing start. All these conversations, all of these, these open dynamics where people can feel comfortable talking about uncomfortable situations.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's a great way to start. And so I put the infinity symbol because, there's a lot of droplets and it's messy because it's going to be a messy process. It's going to be a messy process. It's emotional, it's heartbreaking, but we all have to start somewhere. And when we get to that point, it'll come together so harmoniously. And I feel like that it would just be a breath of fresh air and, a weight off of everybody's chest. And I honestly wish I lived to see that day where this is no longer an issue.
Well,
we wanna put that up at Tease Me. Can we showcase that at Tease Me for a little while?
Yeah, as soon as I get it done, I will get a hold of you.
Okay, we're gonna put it on the wall.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this segment has been brought to you by Tease Me, and you can. It is not on. Okay,
shout out to our sponsors.
You guys both have the right voices, at least. Come on, let's hear it.
That's right.
This has been great.
This has been great.
Thank you guys for joining.
Can I leave them with a poem?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. This poem is called For It Is Written. Marvel well unto me, for this shine is forged in formidable fires with no hopes to be extinguished, and each spark is a declaration of existence in spite of the spit-on integrity of life and freedom to live. I was born here on earth, and it don't have no founding date, but in this dirt I have found my smile in hate, and it seems like hurt is a primary ingredient for my apple pie. Tastes like victory no matter how bitter the bite, and with each bite I consume, Tasting more like the strange is fruit for a sweeter taste, I do hope. Nope, just on the other end of the rope is the evidence of an allegiance pledged under a broken oath, a word betrayed. Managed to infringe liberty and sworn on the Bible, I hope is actually open with rigorous training to note, for aim to sublime. We've been telling you, as truth is evident as the sun shines, not sometimes, but as connected to this attempt of democratic decency, as cotton from field by way of hand, scarred by the bundles on bodies, burnt and beaten to evolve and walk not too far or more, earn well the red between white stripes, praying to stars, pleading under this darkness for more, all while still being the wind in which that bald eagle soars. It is written, pride goes before the destruction. Beaten we may be, broken and chained we have, risen as the sun watches you revolve in and out of the darkest halls. I've come to know faith that just lays on my shoulder to hold me up. Built on backs of lashes, ego broken masters, nation's wealth just off of molasses alone. This whole globe is my home. We stand on the strength of the disenfranchised, disrespectfully disowned, constantly set apart and yet constantly finding new courage of heart, determinations of souls that shine in spite of the divisions and the lines of reconstructed race, telling the story of just how character is truly derived. And in spite of all this hate, how love still survives. Can't you feel this? My God, grace pressing through my center, feeling like every moment of hurt hurled our way that history can't remember. Still, we are standing together by each other's side. Further and higher we can rise, by and by and by and by. But this pride can often make one subside, especially when we know pain is a prudent teacher of the cost. Thought we would have learned better listening to the whispers of the lives lost. Often, far too often, anger is granted a pass, and yet we continue to persist through life's looking glass, dodging and weaving, seeking healing in the midst of all this grieving, understanding that we stand on the mighty shoulders of sunflowers and dreamers who made light in the shadows, so the world can see this too is our home, for it is written, and our presence won't go quiet in the night, but will build like we always have. All this persistence just to appreciate the liberty and the kind-hearted laugh. So be it if this is on this path, we are the results of answered prayers to chart these waters here in the aftermath. And that's that piece. Again, thank you all for tuning in. Tune in next month, same time, same place, second Friday. We've had a good time. And I thank you all for joining us this evening. Miranda, great job. To our panelists, wonderful, wonderful dialogue. You guys have truly set the tone for 2021. Tamika, good job. Veronica, we love you. We appreciate you. Great work. We out.
Until we meet again, thank you guys.
Thank you all.
Be blessed.